Good evening,
Hi.
everyone. This is Jeremy from the Viewpoint Gallery here in Halifax, and I am here with Roxanne Smith to discuss her self-portraiture. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you started taking self-portraits?
Well, my first time I did it was as an assignment in university. And then I didn't do anything further with it for a long time. Then I started thinking about time and storytelling. And I started to have figures in motion that were blurring. I was getting some friends to pose thinking about that particular story. And the funny thing was, we had a photo session where I was really unhappy with the photo that was taken of me. And I decided to take control. I don't like pictures of myself, which is, I guess it's understandable, who does? And I still don't really. But I don't really consider these to be self-portraits insofar as they're more of using myself as a model to express the idea of the story that I wanted to set up for that location.
Your work is almost always in black and white. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is almost always in black and white, not exclusively, but pretty much entirely. I started my photography life in a black and white darkroom and fell in love with photography through black and white processing, like developing the print in the darkroom tray, and was like seeing that appear on the paper was pretty magical stuff. And it's like, okay, that's it. That's what I want to do. And so in art school, it was primarily black and white, although we did learn how to do color slides, developing my own color slides. So I did that. But then when I got out of university, I wasn't able to do any photography insofar as I didn't have a darkroom anymore. And then I got back into black and white photography because the darkroom became available to me. And it was what I knew and what I was happy with. And I like black and white photography because it carries the essence of the subject without, I don't want to say distraction of color, because that can be used to create the story and to create an event in a way. But for me, I found that it got to the abstract, the graphic nature of the image. And so it became more of a flat thing. It was an object and it was a print as opposed to a window looking through to into another world in that way.
Do you think are you happy that in school they made you do mostly black and white?
I could have done color, I suppose. We were shown how to make prints from color slides, so we were doing Ciberchromes. I just wasn't as much interested in it. I really liked the simplicity of the black and white.
One of your images, it reminds me a lot of Andrew Wyeth's painting, Christina's World. Can you explain a little bit about the story behind your image?
That came about as we went with a friend to visit a little cottage for the afternoon, and there was this beautiful house at the end of the point of land, and it was abandoned. It's an Andrew Cobb house, and it was abandoned. And so we were walking around and peeking in the windows, and I was photographing it. And I sort of walked down the hill, and I looked back up, and I go, oh, look at that. That sort of reminds me of that painting. And so I thought, well, maybe if I just sit on the grass and see what happens with it. So it was not really an attempt to copy it per se, but more of let's get that feeling. And I've done that with a number of pieces, a number of artists where I try to get the same sort of feeling as a piece that am familiar with from looking at art books and going to art galleries and things. So it's like a vocabulary of image making in my head, and then go through that. I don't always do that. I go through those images.
It's almost like an homage to the artist. Another similar one I see is Dwayne Michaels, kind of influencing his work in yours as well. Sometimes you write on the images, and sometimes in the series he seems to be really important.
and storytelling. What I like about his work, he does not restrict himself to one way of telling a story. He allows himself the freedom to use different ways of telling a story for each image, and he'll develop his style, his technique, his storytelling methods.
I think it's very important for artists to be free and to do whatever they want. Supposedly there's a story that where he met Cartier-Bresson. Cartier-Bresson just laughed at him. He didn't consider him to be a real photographer because he wrote on his images and because he had multiple images.
Yeah, the picture's worth 1,000 words. Why would you need to write on it? Why would you need to do series? And he felt that he was very dismissed at early part in his career, and he just kept on doing it. And gradually the world accepted him because he was consistent and strong and doing what he had a passion for, and that's what was important for him.
I remember one of the things I was really lucky to be a part of an early draft of your artist talk at NSCC is clearly you had a lot of knowledge about self-portraiture and the history of photography and everything. I'm curious if you could go back in time and talk to any one photographer or group of photographers, like who do you think that would be and why?
It would depend on the day even. One of the first photographer whose work I really, really liked is Gertrude Cassiber. She's an American photographer who spent a lot of time in Europe. She was one of the founders of the photo-secessionist movement. Okay. She was also the first person to quit.
Really?
Yeah, she had an argument with Stieglitz. Because she had to make a living for herself, she did portrait photography as a way of earning an income. And he felt that was just, you don't do that. And she needed to make a living. So she set up the photo studio and she was taking portraits, and she founded an organization for female photographers. She traveled all over Europe and the States and in England, talking to women about starting photography, and it was really interesting.
That's amazing. I didn't know that at all. But I know one incredible book, looking at photographs, they have one of her images, a woman holding a baby, and it's just gorgeous. What is it that you believe makes a self-portrait successful?
What makes a self-portrait successful, as in any portrait or any image, is that you go beyond appearances and tell something more about the subject that wouldn't be necessarily known otherwise. So go beyond just what it looks like.
What advice would you give to somebody that wanted to start the series of self-portraits?
Look at a lot of work. Don't neglect different lighting. Don't neglect different points of view, and don't be afraid to be weird.
That's great, yeah.
Because it may seem weird, but actually, as an image, as a story, it can be very, very compelling. So,
I think all great artists were a little bit weird.
Yeah, probably.
Roxanne, what kind of photos do you enjoy looking at?
I really like looking at photos of people. I really like people watching, and I got into beginning self-portrait work or photographing myself because I realized that photographs with people in it were my favorite ones to look at, and that none of my pictures, none of my images had people in them, absolutely none. And I realized something had to change. So I took a good hard look at what I was doing and thought about it, and realized that what I wanted to do was to show people. I wanted to tell stories, and so from there I used myself because I'm always with me. So I'm always there, and I don't necessarily have a really, really clear idea of what the story is that I want to tell. So as I'm going through the space, moving around, because my camera photographs sequences, and so it just keeps shooting and shooting and shooting until I tell it not to. And through that, just sort of wandering around the space, doing something comes up that will work and tell a story with that particular space. And And for a long time, I just was making these images, but not printing them, not showing them at the gallery. So eventually I started showing them, and then from there on, I just kept doing primarily this. It was an evolution.
Do you plan out these images, or is it spontaneous? Like, do you just find something you like and then start shooting?
It's a combination. Sometimes I'm working on some pieces now that when I made them, I did plan an event to take place, and I wasn't sure how I was going to exhibit them, because I wanted to exhibit them as a set, but how to do that. And so I've been working on ways of showing them together. In my exhibition, Glimpses of Forgotten Memories, and I showed with Kathleen Flanagan, my images were a sequence of 3 above each other, sort of like a little film strip showing a series of images that progress, a developing of that particular idea, but somewhat differently. So,
Do you have a favorite series that you've done?
Usually the thing that I'm working on now is my favorite.
Oh, that's great.
So it's, I know that you like to breathe normally, and that was a really nice series, and I really enjoyed working on that. It was a really interesting project.
One other thing,
And
where can people find you online? Like, what's your website?
so my website is roxannesmith.ca. Don't have a Facebook site for that particular purpose, but my Instagram site is Roxanne6098 with an E on the end, 6098.
Perfect. I think that's great. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeremy.